welcome to the Red Diaries. Today, I'm going to speak about the brave few journalists that we have in the world. When I say few, there's probably hundreds, but I'm talking in the percentile kind of range, you know. So the latest one is Tariq Haddad, who's actually a white guy. He sounds like an Arab, but I mean, he probably is, but he looks like a white guy with the, just, not that should make any difference, although it probably does to some people's minds. But I just wanted to point out anyway. He was working for Newsweek. He wanted to report on the truth of Syria, but he wasn't allowed. He wasn't allowed to. No. So he almost, basically, he lost his job for being a reporter, for doing his job. And this is what, if people understand how the media works in this day and age, that is how it works. If you don't toe the line, or even if, okay, you might not do what they say, but as long as you don't do what they say not to do, then you can fly under the radar and be okay. If you refuse to be a propagandist and you refuse to pile on, like the best example of the pile on is Rachel Maddow. Some might actually say that she generated her, just by herself, she generated the whole Russiagate hoax, right? She's a complete corporate shill. She was making something like $30,000 to $35,000 a show in the USA. This is the example of someone who sucks Satan's dick and licks his black balls in the downstroke, right? She has absolutely no morals whatsoever. And that's why she's been against they're the enemies of goodness, you know? That's, when you're a reporter who, I'll give another example. Years ago in MSNBC, there was Crystal Ball. I don't know who remembers her. And also, Glenn somebody, a guy in Atlanta who, I used to live in Atlanta, and on, I think it's the 7 network, that's Australia, I can't remember the network, but good looking guy, and the chick he was with, who used to present with him, was like a coloured woman, like half black, half white, good looking chick as well. And they used to just do the old smiley, kind of American Australian news, where everyone, oh, it's smiling, everyone's happy, and look, everyone looks perfect. He used to do that kind of news, and then he became a real journalist. I will find out his name, Glenn somebody. I think his name's Glenn. Anyway, he became a real journalist recently. I've seen him on, I don't know where it is I've seen him, but I've seen him reporting true news. And it's really good to see these journalists do their job. Because if you think about it, okay, when I did IT years ago, one of our things, every year you have certain modules you have to repeat, like network principles or programming. There was lots of things, database management, that kind of thing, database coding, different areas of IT. So this is like computer science, right? So you don't just do one area, you do the overall IT management, right? And network systems, and software. And you also do ethics and professionalism, like, so the legal aspects as well as the ethical and moral aspects of information technology. And over the years, I can tell you right now, the situations I've been in where I could have made millions out of data, but didn't, or I could have made millions screwing someone over with having inside knowledge, but didn't, because it's not part of what you trained for and what your profession's about. Hackers, for example. So IT got split up into many different sectors, and one of those sectors is hacking. So you could call it, it's basically a split off of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity split off from IT, because that's where IT has grown so much. It's like watching a sponge. It's a little small, and you add some water to it. Okay, well, now you've got to segment all those little parts. Well, cybersecurity became many different things, and hacking is one segment of that. That's where you actively penetrate networks and systems. You could even say in the future, you might even get specialists who actively only work in the networking side of hacking, or only work in the systems, may even be working only in the Linux side of hacking, or only in the Microsoft side. This is how much IT still has to grow. But forget that. To backtrack what I'm saying, that's one aspect of what I learned, and I can tell you right now, I don't live in a $1 million home. I live in a very modest, simple house that I'm doing up right now, and I never have lived in a $1 million home, except for places that I've rented. So basically, I could have easily been, and I still could, but I'm not going to betray who I am. And it's really good to see these journalists not betraying who they are and doing their job, doing what they were trained to do, and saying, right, I decided to be this as a profession. I decided to be a specialist in this area. I'm not going to say, right, well, what I'm going to be now, I'm going to be a marketing guru, or let's say a marketing plug, instead of being a journalist. I'm going to start a marketing company instead of a media company, news media company. So a lot of these media companies, the mainstream media, that is media. There's no news about it. There's no news in MSNBC. There's no news in CNN. And there's very little in Fox News. And by the way, as little as 6 years ago, probably even less, I would have flipped that and said the opposite, as if CNN and MSNBC had more to offer, or BBC had more to offer than Fox News. No. Those three, BBC, Fox News, actually Network 7 in Australia. I would even say to a degree that Al Jazeera has probably overtaken Fox in its balance of fake news, right? Fake news propaganda. I suppose it isn't the same thing. I get annoyed when people use fake news. A couple of years ago, when Donald Trump started saying this, actually Hillary Clinton started saying it first, I think, but he started saying it to show that they were actually worse than what the Democrats side were, because of course this is what they do. They project. The Democrats project all the time. Everything they do, every new scandal that comes up, you need to understand if the Democrats come up with something new in America, or the Labour come up with something new in Britain, that's because they're doing it themselves. In this day and age, the only time something new enters the regurgitation machine of bullshit that is the media is when the people who are the accusers are doing the same themselves, right? Anyway, so I wanted to point out that people like... I don't know, those of you who are from America, if this actually gets out beyond my one subscriber. If you remember Ed Schultz, right? That guy, he got laid off by, I think the parent company, Comcast, let him go, right? A good journalist. Maybe it's because he was nearing the end of his life. He's dead now, actually. He died, I think, last year or the year before. He had a show on RT. Now RT is meant to be Russians. Now, just to get this straight, RT does not fund the shows on there. And I know I sound like an RT shill right now, but I'm just trying to correct. I'm just trying to point out bullshit where bullshit exists. They do not fund the shows. What they do is they allow the shows to be aired. There's a big difference. So people like Max Kaiser, he doesn't need RT's money to get out there, right? He could use his own money because the guy's probably a billionaire. The fact that he's given thousands of Bitcoins, like I'm talking, if I can think back to the days when he's been talking about Bitcoin since before I got into it, right? He got into it around about $3. Actually, no, I got into it before, but I got into it again later at 116, and I only really got, from what I have right now, I only got into it about $115 around that. I remember it was the lower end of the $100, right? So he was a proponent of it long before I was, because I was very skeptical of it at first. I was like, let's try this out. It's cheap and easy. You could buy it on eBay years ago. You could use PayPal actually originally to buy Bitcoin, but he was into it like a proper proponent of it from day one, and so was Stacy, of course. Now, he gave gifts to his audience members of 40, 100, 500 Bitcoin at a time. He gave scumbags like George Galloway, a traitor from my country, who works for the system. He works for the evil empire of England. And what's the other guy, the other English dude? Russell Brand. He gave him 1,000. I think he gave George Galloway 2,000 and gave Russell Brand 1,000. But anyway, if you can think of that, think of the value of that. He's not going to give his main stack to, well, anyone, are you? You're going to keep it yourself. That must be a fraction of what he owns. So he must be a billionaire just in Bitcoin alone, right? I'm guessing. There's a guy who owns over a ton of silver. Anyway, his show, and by the way, his show did not start on RT. This is another thing to remember. Being a Russian shill, well, he used to work for BBC, Al Jazeera, France 24, and on all of those shows prior to RT, he called out the central banks. He called out Alan Greenspan, all these sort of people. He called out people like Jamie Dimon from day one, calling him an anal louse, like a parasite, like he is, right? These are people that caused the economic crashes. And for people to call him a Russian asset now, it's like, well, okay, let's entertain that thought. Let's say that Russia has assets. If Russia's assets are people like him, then Russia must be the good guys. That's the only thing I'm guessing, because, and even though I know that they're not in many ways, you look at what goes on in their own country, the suppression of democracy. Who's to say democracy is right or not? The jury's out on that one, because dumbocracy relies upon propaganda. If you can propagandize a population and tell everybody, like the example I always give is, as a child, I was in South Africa, and I watched as these people were voting Inkatha Freedom Party, yes, and this guy was getting asked, I'll never ever forget this, as long as I live, CCTV, it was a black channel, but SABC is the main channel in South Africa. I think it owns CTV as well. But back in the day, that was the black channel, and then you had a white channel that had English on some days and Afrikaans. You had to listen to it on the radio, on simulcast on every other day, right? That was insane. But that channel there was interviewing a guy, and this will stick in my head as being the example of how democracy isn't what it seems like. If you don't have an educated population, if there's not only free access to the truth, but also that lying, and if you get found out spreading lies, it should be death penalty or something close. Because what happens is there's absolutely zero accountability for those that spread lies. Now, you could say, oh, well, it's an open field. Look at America, an open field. Everyone can spread it at once. Well, if Fox and CNN and MSNBC all decide to spread a narrative that is a lie, and it's the same lie, then you've basically bought democracy. And then what you have is, like they say, democracy is just mob rule. I don't really believe that. I just believe that democracy relies upon the access, not only the access of the truth, but it also relies upon the punishment of misinformation. And I know that sounds like a very fascist paradigm, but there could be ways to structure this. For example, do you have any argument or any leg to stand on that what you're saying in the Russiagate is true? Rachel Maddow can't. There's absolutely nothing to stand upon. So, Rachel Maddow, she should be put to death, in my opinion. And people like her. Because if you look at what she's doing, you might say, oh, that's pretty harsh, Craig, to say that she should be put to death. Here's why. Look at what the media did. Look at back in the days of when CNN was worse than MSNBC. Now MSNBC overtook them as being worse propagandists. When they spread the lie of WMDs, how many Iraqis died? The answer is over 1 million, right? And if they were, I'm sorry to say it, and I'm not against Judaism, but if they were Jewish, we would have been told that it would have been 10 million. It would have been ramped up to being a lot more than what it is, right? That's just the reality of how propaganda works, right? I've been to Sobibor, and I've been to a lot of these places, and Auschwitz. There's no way what they say is the numbers. That's a finger in the air estimation. Although it was a lot of people, I'm not going to go down that stupid rabbit hole. It's a waste of time. And that's all it is. It actually is a distraction, that rabbit hole. I'm sick of my friends arguing about it. I'm sick of me arguing about it with people with reality, what I've seen myself and what they haven't seen themselves, and are commenting on crap they haven't seen. and also things I've put together and bothered to question where they haven't bothered to question at all. Some of my friends have, many haven't. And it's not, by the way, it's not just friends of mine that live in Israel, by the way. It's not just Jewish friends. It's who say this. It's people who are Jews who actually can see the truth as well. Who are not fucking idiots, you know. And that's the one thing you've got. Just like these guys, like Aaron Matty right now, who's in the grey zone, advertising on his channel this true news. Like Max Blumenthal as well. You got to look up this guy too. Another American telling true news. The guy I just mentioned before, who's just left Newsweek. Tariq Hamad, white guy. Him. They're involved in true news. They're involved in the truth. Max Kaiser is involved in true financial news. Stacey Herbert is involved in true financial news. They were not going to sit there and take money because they don't. You know what? When it comes to those two, they don't need. Not only do they not need to take the money, they didn't take the money when they could. They were both Wall Street traders. They both quit. They both couldn't stand the toxic environment that was Wall Street and the City of London and London Wall, all those banks that I used to also work for back in the day and would never. The only reason I'd ever work for Chase Manhattan, Morgan Stanley, who else did I work for again? Credit Suisse or any of these companies again, is if I was planting them. I was planting something. I won't get into that one. But anyway, that's probably the only reason I'd work for them, to bring down the system, because they are really the epitome of evil. So, what I'm trying, this episode really is just about the fact that there's a groundswell at the moment, and it's only less than 1% of reporters, but it still is a groundswell. It's a pimple. It's a pimple in the reporting framework of the world that's showing its head. And I'm really glad it's happening. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. I think there'll be a day of reckoning, many years, maybe a decade from now, where people like Rachel Maddow, people like all the women on the one show is, I think, there's a show in America and the UK. It's like a gossip pretend news thing. The United States has one. Actually, most countries have one, and it's probably created by the same people. It's probably a Harpo production by Oprah Winfrey. For all we know, because she's that kind of person. She's a propagandist as well. So is Ellen DeGeneres. So when you see who the enemy are, what I'm going to say is there'll be a day of reckoning in about maybe 5, maybe 10 years, where all these people will be called out for what they are, and there'll be no safe place to hide from the ridicule that they'll receive. Doesn't matter how much money they've got; they'll have to be on these little islands outside New Zealand or somewhere, and their little bug out pads, because that's where they all go. By the way, they all go. I'm selling out of New Zealand because I'm not a creature, but they're all buying into New Zealand, because they really believe, well, if all the things that we helped happen culminate together and produce global war, where will be safe from nuclear weapons? If the paradigm and the end game that we helped happens, where can we go and scurry away and hide like cockroaches? And I know I'm speaking like some kind of, when you look at these fascist countries, when they bring people to, actually, let's look at Saddam Hussein. When there was people who were calling him out in his own government, he would put them to death, right? Now we understand that those countries operate differently than our countries. And that is the name of the game out there. People like Gaddafi, who actually wasn't doing that, but we said he was anyway, because he had a golden gun. He had a golden gun that cost around about, I was looking for a Desert Eagle 50 caliber, a 50 cal, by the way, not the 44 that he had. The 50 cal is worth about $2,500. You can get a 44 Magnum version of the gold one, or the Tiger Stripe golden one, for around about 1,600, 1,800, right? BBC made it out like he was holding a massive golden statue of all the wealth of his country. He was holding around about a $2,000 gun and giving each citizen of the country $60,000 for their first home because of the oil money they had. Oh, socialism. Corporate socialism. When you let companies in to take your oil, that's corporate socialism. So if you are a person that wants to go against socialism because you hate socialism and communism, well, socialism's not communism, for a start. But also, crony capitalism is corporate socialism. You are a socialist. If you believe that the situation in Venezuela that is completely whitewashed by the mainstream media in America as being something that's not nefarious, then you are part of the problem. You're a useful idiot. You are cattle, right? Anyway, this episode was really about who the good guys are. If you see someone like Tariq today risk his, not only his job, but his career, these are the people to be watching for true news, right? You don't just put your... Now, by the way, later down the track, there'll be false flag true news people. You will have people who pretend to go against the grain. This always happens, right? You get it in Bitcoin reporting, for example. People who pretend to be a true Bitcoiner, who pretend to be against the US dollar and every other fiat currency that controls us. And meanwhile, all they are is actually shills, right? The same thing will happen in reporting. You know why? Because cowards don't move first. Cowards hold on to the raft until it's going over the cliff, until it's going over the waterfall. That's what cowards do, right? And the cowards, when they think, oh, damn, well, 20%, the initial cowards, once 20% of true journalists have jumped ship and said, I'm not going to report fake news. I'm not going to be a propagandist. The more intelligent cowards will say, shit, looking at the hyperbolic rise of people telling the truth, if I don't do it soon, I'm going to look like a bandwagon person. So I'm going to do it now. Still a coward, right? So you need to base the intellect of the person. So the dumber journalists, the real thick as pig shit ones, right? And this is why I don't think Crystal Ball's any great genius. But the fact that she jumped ship very early means she's a good one, all right? Don't confuse yourself. If she was spreading all this crap on MSNBC, that's because she's not the sharpest tool. But hey, when it comes to heart and soul, she definitely has that. Because she's left, what is it called? The Rising or something like that? Their show, I can't remember what it's called. It's a show on The Hill. Look on YouTube, you'll see The Hill. Her, and I can't remember the guy's name. I just remember her because she used to be a propagandist with MSNBC. And it's really good to see. It's good to see people years ago, like as I said before, the guy who died, Ed Schultz. It's good to see Chris Hedges, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner, him come against the system and get his own show. It's good to see Alex Salmond, who's actually a politician from Scotland, get his own show because he was. They spread they used the Assange lie. The Assange lie is, oh, he's a rapist. Pedophile gets used sometimes too because they know that people like me would want to kill him if he's a pedophile, right? Oh, I used the word kill. I'm going to video strike down to nothing now. I don't care. No, well, I'll put it on. I'll put the video on BitChute as well. I've stopped using BitTube, unfortunately, even though it's better than BitChute, because it just hasn't got the discovery. I might start using not DLive. What's the other one? There is another one that's being used. No, I can't remember. Doesn't matter. There's a lot of these decentralized ones. I've yet to see one that has enough intelligence behind it to be good. But anyway, I'm gonna carry on. Max and Stacey, of course. Aaron Maté from the Grey Zone. Max Blumenthal, definitely. And there's a host of other people like Lee Camp, for example. That Jimmy Dore, if you want like comedic truth, Jimmy Dore is a really good one. But my point overall is that we're seeing a groundswell. It may be a pimple, but it still is a groundswell. And hopefully we'll see a lot more of it because it's only the first maybe 5-10% that count. The rest of them, you cannot be sure that they're just not doing it just to be popular. Just to do... Oh, by the way, so I got this. It's really annoying that when you turn the camera around on a Samsung, and by the way, if anyone can comment on this, I'd love to know how. I used to be an IT guy, now I'm not, because I hate technology. I use it just to get by. Why is it in reverse? Why don't I just go the normal way around? Why doesn't my phone just not annoy me for a while? Anyway, if you can tell me how not to turn that around, how to turn that around, that'd be good. Oh, my mum got me this for Christmas, you see. I've actually got one of these from my ex-girlfriend years ago, but it's a different shaped one. It's the more infinity blob sign. Anyway, she was Maori from New Zealand. This is from New Zealand. My mum lives there. That's about it, really. I wanted to just, I've got to shout out to these people who are so fantastic in this world of just complete underhanded fascism. It's not even, because true fascism like Mussolini, look how proud Mussolini was. I'm an arrogant asshole. Yeah, because the Trump face, like, quite a lot. And a lot of people do that. So he has that. The guy from 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps who was backing Nigel Farage, he does that. Yeah, here's my big fat gut. I'm using it as a table. The propagandists who stand up for English imperialism and people who stand up for the UK, even though the UK does not exist. All it is, UK is a badge for England. It just means England. It means English rule. And I'm not against English. I've got English family, English friends. When I say English, just to get this cleared here for people who ever heard me speak about English in a very negative way, I'm always talking about the Etonians, people who went to Eton College, the 0.0001 percenters who have always, next to Harrow, every single Prime Minister in Britain has gone to Harrow or Eton. Fun fact for you there, right? That's a fact. That's the insider crew who runs England, right? I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about English. They're just as much victims as the Scots or Northern Irish or anyone else is, or Irish are. Okay, that's it. See you later. Bye. Wow.